Our next session, I suppose, in any conversation about assessment and standards, the views and voice of our learners should always be front and centre. And we're delighted to welcome a learner panel here today, which will be chaired by Alexa MacDermot, who's a student with UCD. And just in advance of today's event, AHEAD actually issued a call for learners to share with us their views and experiences on assessment, and we have a short video of those to share with you just before this session.
QQI, AHEAD and Dawn are exploring the topic of inclusive assessment and standards, and we want to better understand student perspectives on the topic. So we put a call out to FET and higher education students to submit selfie video responses to 2 key questions, and the students had a lot to say. This video brings together a representative summary of their responses. Firstly, we asked them about negative experiences of assessment, which made it less inclusive and presented barriers for them to demonstrating their learning. Here's what they had to say.
I'm already registered with DSS, but I found exams incredibly difficult because even though you have accommodations for exams, they do not address sensory needs. I could not manage with the noise and the light and the sound on top of the anxiety with exams. So for people like myself who have who are neurodivergent and have sensory issues, the typical exam formation, even with disability accommodation, really is not conducive to allowing us to perform at our best.
The only negative side probably would be PowerPoints and presenting them. That's probably because I'm of the older generation and it was something totally new to me. But I found by doing group work before the PowerPoint and by working in smaller groups to start with, I was able to present in smaller groups. So when this type of assessment came around, I slowly gained in confidence, and now I have no problem sitting in front or standing in front of a larger group.
I like courses where there's lots of assignments and the priority is not on the sitting exam. As a young learner leaving cert, junior cert, I found it built a lot of anxiety up and found it too upsetting. So when I had the choice later on as an adult, I went to QQI level 8 mostly without much written exam content in any of those courses.
In my end of term exam for one of my modules, the questions asked were not something that was covered in class, and this made it challenging for me and my classmates to demonstrate our understanding and knowledge acquired throughout the modules.
Sometimes for our continuous assessments, so throughout the year, we are pushed into an exam hall with everyone else in our class, and our extra time is allocated at the end, and while our classmates can leave. And it kind of lets people know that we have some sort of disability, which is not kind of that nice. I prefer to keep it private.
That's just a sample of some of the barriers to demonstrating learning the students shared, but we also asked them about positive experiences of assessment that made it more inclusive for them to demonstrating their learning, and what would make for a more inclusive assessment experience for them in the future.
My best experience with inclusive assessment were lecturers that were very willing to give extensions. Even if extensions had been asked for before, I would not have gotten through college at all if my lecturers had been unwilling to give extensions. Even for a few days, like that makes such a difference because there's so many other things going on in my life.
Give your student a choice. Choice gives an opportunity to play with your strange sides. If you like report, so write it. If you prefer PowerPoint presentations, then do it. If I prefer book creator, then let me create it. There are so many ways to express your thoughts, especially if you talk about digitalization.
A more inclusive assessment experience for me would be to have the sources relevant to each question on every essay question there is in university level.
I think a more inclusive thing that they could do would be to have maybe a room in exams that's supervised that you could take a minute in during an exam if you take to panic. So like sometimes I panic in exams and I need a minute. I understand obviously people could go and, you know, look up the answers or whatever, but if this room was supervised, that would help a lot.
UDL has ensured that my assessment has been very inclusive from the start. I can't think of anything that would make me feel more inclusive. I think UDL accommodates every type of learner in every situation. I've had a very positive experience with assessment, although at the start, as I say, it was daunting, but I have every help that I need.
Sometimes we've been allowed to pick our own medium that we use for presenting our assignment. So we might have been told that we could use a Word, do a Word report, a book creator, or a PowerPoint presentation. So I found that really good that you could use whatever medium suited your strengths better. You had some flexibility there while we all still had to represent the same learning.
Continuous assessment is a way more easier on people with disabilities than sitting exams, formal exams, as formal exams for people with disabilities can be really pressure and can make people really nervous.
Inclusive assessment to me looks like continuous assessment, in which in tutorials you get questions and answers with your tutors, and you're assessed on how your ability to answer those questions in class through verbal communication. Inclusive assessment to me looks like no in-person exams and massive study halls based on short-term memory and rote learning. Inclusive assessment to me looks like forming your own opinions on things and having long periods of time to execute an answer.
What would make it more inclusive for me, I think it would be if you could replicate the experience I had in France, where it was an ongoing assessment over a period of days based upon my interaction with service users, but also colleagues. And the entire process itself was a learning experience. And I think for people like myself who are neurodivergent, it is very difficult to accommodate us, and I appreciate that, and all our needs. But being able to see me over a long period of time really can show my own strengths.
Thank you to all of the brilliant students who contributed to this work.
Okay, good morning everybody. My name is Alexa MacDermot and I'm here with my fellow panellists who are also students. And thank you to QQI, Dawn and Edeh for having us today. We've a really exciting and diverse student panel with loads of assessment experience in different realms. I'm happy to pass you around to have the panellists introduce themselves and let us know where and what they are studying.
Hello everyone, my name is Ebere and I'm a law student from Maynooth University.
Hi, I'm Joseph and I'm currently taking part in a PLC Coláiste Dhúlaigh in preliminary engineering.
Hi, good morning everybody. I'm David and I'm currently studying in ETB in Tallaght, and I've done numerous QQI courses, and currently I'm studying an arts course, level 5. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Caoimhe. I'm studying my Masters in NCAD and I'm also the Student Engagement Officer for Edeh.
Thanks everyone. So I'm going to start off with question 1. So Joseph, if I might ask you first, I'm wondering, was there any particular messages from the student video that really resonated with you and your experiences?
When the person at the start mentioned kind of about sensory things, it just immediately took me back to a particular day in my leaving cert. I did have a separate room, which was great, but I just remember someone in their garden with a really loud lawnmower and a whole load of garden equipment just that day. It was just over the leaving cert that happened. It was a lovely few weeks of weather, and all the way throughout it, this person was just getting their garden done, like basically almost like just over the other side of a wall next to the room I was in. And that was just so infuriating. I mean, obviously there's not really anything that can be done about that, but it was annoying nonetheless. But then there was this one particular day where the room I was designated in, they decided that they'd do it was next door to the metalwork room, and they decided that they'd kind of update that room on the day of my exam, in my leaving cert. And it was like, why? Like, that could have waited a day, you know?
Absolutely.
And then they said, oh, we can move you somewhere else, but I was moved somewhere else, but then it's kind of stressful when you don't know that's going to happen.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I'd never thought about the whole thing about different people doing different kinds of assessments. Like the idea of, obviously exams work for some people, but don't work for others. Continuous assessment may stress out people in some particular ways more than others. The idea of there being different ways in which people can be assessed is very promising, I think. Like, say, some people might do the exam, you can choose between the exam, like maybe, say, if there was maths, for example, you could choose between doing an exam like in Christmas in the summer, or you could choose between doing a project or something like that, you know?
Right.
I think that's very, very promising for the future.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Ebere, do you want to have a go at that question?
I can agree as well, like Joseph. I definitely think different modes of assessment, because again, like there's different students and we're all kind of like learning the same way, but like we process things differently and we should also be tested differently. So I do think, and I remember one of my electives in university was anti-racism, was a module, and the lecturer is really great, and she allowed us to pick our form of assessment. So I think it was either through essay, through like a video, you could do a podcast, you could write and do a PowerPoint, and I just thought like it's also very creative. So I think like if educators explore different ways that are also creative, that will make you like break out of your shell, because I've never done anything like that before, so it was really fun and I enjoyed it and I got a good mark, so I guess it worked well. But yeah, like if educators could definitely use different methods creatively. And also I remember in the video someone mentioned that I think the differentiating of like different rooms for different people, sometimes neurodivergent people, I think that can classify them, like that others them, and sometimes that can bring a sense of shame. So I could definitely see like that definitely resonated with me sometimes, that like certain barriers you face may cause you to have some shame. And even though I guess universities and everyone want to help you succeed, I think like there should be a forum or a way that even though people want to keep maybe their disability or their problem or their barrier private to them, there should also be a method that we can help them, you know?
Yeah.
That doesn't really kind of like open it up, and even if they want to keep it private, they can keep it private.
Yeah, that sounds really nice. That sounds good. So the second question is, to create more inclusive assessment practices, we have to recognise that barriers exist for certain student cohorts. I'm wondering, Ebere, if I can come back to you, if you could share an experience of some barriers you have experienced in assessment in terms of being able to fully and equitably demonstrate your learning.
Yeah, like this brings me all the way back to secondary school. Thankfully, I've had great positive experiences in university so far, but I definitely think one barrier towards assessment I faced was it wasn't necessarily an assessment, but it was kind of like leading up to like assessments and my leaving cert. I think I was in 5th year. No, I was actually 6th year. And I was preparing to apply for different grant schemes or, etc. It's like those type of courses. And I remember a student counselor told me people like me cannot apply for that, implying that like I was different. I don't know if it was because of my race or, certain things like that. And it just really made me question a lot. It was really like that really like demotivated me, and I felt like I really wanted to clarify, what do you mean people like me? So I definitely think educators and people within higher education bodies and institutions should be more empathetic. They should definitely have inclusive like training. Like I think it should be mandatory. I don't think it should be optional. Because that type of thing, it can definitely affect people. Like thankfully I'm surrounded with supportive people that will like help me come back up from situations, but some people may not be surrounded, and like that type of thing might make people defer or even like drop out of college. and maybe college or education can be the only reason somebody might prosper in life or progress. So I think it's really important for people and educators in general to be aware of people's barriers and also help people overcome their barriers.
It sounds like a really unpleasant power dynamic that happened there, where you couldn't ask for them to qualify what they were saying to you. Okay, David, would you like to comment?
Yes, just to let you know that I struggled with dyslexia all my life. It was only back less than 7 years ago that I couldn't take it anymore, and I decided to do something about it. What I want to do is to read out my answer to you, because this will be the first time I ever read in public. So the reason I'm doing this is because I am so honoured to be here with QQI and Edeh and people that really do care about disability. So each time you're kind, each time gentle, each time encouraging, each time you try to understand because you really care, our hearts grow wings, very small wings, but wings. With your power to touch us into feeling, we can breathe life into us. We want you to know that. We want you to know how important you are to us, how you are a creator, an honest-to-God creator of people like us. If you choose to, your organizations can break down the walls which we tremble. You can remove our mask. You can release us from the shadows of panic, from our lonely prison of isolation, because our brains work different to yours. If you choose to, please choose to. Don't pass us by. It will not be easy for you. A long conviction of our learning disability, worthlessness, builds strong walls. Sorry, I'm just next page on this. Sorry. But we are told that love is stronger than the strongest walls, and in this lies our hope. Please try and beat down those walls of disability, injustice, and discrimination with firm hands, but gentle hands. For we are very sensitive and vulnerable. Who are we, you may ask? We are human with learning disabilities like dyslexia, autism, ADH, and others. We are up here to face you, to request the same basic equality like neurotypical people, for better accommodation to grow our different abilities. As neurodiverse people, we often suffer daily from discrimination in our communities, our workplaces, like unconscious bias, lack of representation, privilege, and automatic stereotyping and judging, and not being employed because of accommodation needs, among other things. These are the barriers that we need to go away for real equality to happen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David.
To be sorry you asked me another question.
Thank you, that was beautiful, thank you. My question is to Caoimhe next. I know that Edeh worked with the Altitude Charter project, which is the National Charter for Universal Design in Tertiary Education, to gather the views of students on what would make their experience more inclusive and flexible. Can you shed some light on the priorities they highlighted with regard to assessment, please?
For sure. So there was 1,300 students who contributed, and they wanted to make their learning experience more accessible, flexible and inclusive. Some of the ways that they highlighted was to implement more continuous assessment, as well as facilitating inclusive assessment, reducing the number of exams or offering choice in formats and topics such as open book exams, and utilising a variety of assessments like with in-class preparation and meaningful and timely feedback. They also wanted to reduce the assessment loads or spread out the assessment loads over like a regular amount of time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So following on from Caoimhe's look at the wider student population, I'm wondering if a few of you can share a positive experience of assessment which made demonstrating your learning more inclusive for you, and tell us a bit about why you found it inclusive. And this question is for Joseph, please.
Well, obviously the garden escapade wasn't great now, but once I started in Coláiste, Dhúlaigh, I did have I did have my needs provided for to an extent in the Leaving Cert. It felt like kind of almost, when I was applying or asking for them, it felt as if I was asking them to donate a kidney.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas once I kind of got to Coláiste, Dhúlaigh, it was as simple as walking up to the disability office and kind of saying, okay, this is what my needs are. Would you be able to accommodate these? And it was like, as soon as that, it was done. As simple as that. And it was kind of like, I didn't understand how that happened, but it was amazing. But even though it was very positive. I felt great, I have to say, and that was very positive. That there were people there who knew me, and they knew exactly what I needed, and they were able to do that without much difficulty on either of our parts, because we were kind of working together about it. I feel like with providing needs, it's very much about communication between the learner and whoever is providing the additional kind of whatever the stuff you might need be, if it's extra time or space or whatever you may need.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much. And the same question, please, to David.
This is the positive experience.
Yeah.
Again, I have a note. It was a letter to people who care. From alpha to omega, square root to root squared, negative to positive, that was career paths. And here is another challenge to write how I felt the first day. I didn't say much that day because I had come from a long line of employers that were unsupportive to dyslexia. I grew up in the 60s, and as a man today, I lived with the brutality of corporal punishment for children with dyslexia, children with disabilities, and lack of child family addiction problems, and laughing when I was reading too slow. We all have some dark times in our past. It's how we accept, deal, and make changes through our thoughts and actions that matters. I believe that's why we're here. Through the wonderful teaching in Career Paths, I realised I had given myself plenty of false self-taught over the years and been overcritical of my abilities in maths and literacy. Today, I am not afraid to ask for help or say I am dyslexic if safe or relevant to do so. From day one, I knew I would go to college from that course or get work. I am so thankful for the friendships that I gained there. Sadly, the centre did not survive to continue their crucial service. It was challenging and worth every minute, and I came out a better person and more confident. P.S. The notice board in the canteen had banned words like stupid and cannot. By the end of the course, you knew that these words, that you were here to grow, not to fail. Thank you for all the great staff in Career Paths and the Dyslexia Association. For this part of my life would still be a struggle, difficult and fearful. Good luck to people today with learning difficulties in their education. Student A.
Thank you. Finally, we have... Oh, sorry.
I didn't sign it at the time, but I was to put down.
So the last question I have is for all of you. And if I could ask in 2 or 3 sentences, if you could wave a magic wand, what change would you make to how learners are assessed to make it more inclusive for all students, and why? And Caoimhe, would you like to begin?
Sure. My magic wand is probably a bit fantastical, but it's a magic wand, so that's okay. I think if I had a magic wand, I would make sure all students, when starting tertiary education, have a needs assessment regardless of proof of diagnosis.
Yeah, I second
What a wish.
I know, right? Who would like to go next? Perhaps David?
Yeah, one of the things I do agree with is that each teacher should be trained in special abilities, it's called now. And as of today, they're not. The junior schools do have it, so, but when you're training or teaching adults, you need to have the same basic principles. The other thing for QQI, I think for dyslexic people, there's an awful lot of paperwork to fill out near the end of each course. And if that was, minimised, it would be far, far better.
Thank you. Joseph, would you like to wave a wand?
Well, I had a particular answer in mind, and then I heard Caoimhe speak, and then I heard David speak. So now
you can steal hers, that's fine.
So I have, it's kind of following on what Caoimhe said, especially, I know of some people who were in my year who had dyslexia, and they would have done a needs assessment the way the Leaving Cert did it. And they were kind of like, oh, your writing's fine, you don't need any supports, even though this person had dyslexia. It's kind of like maybe just a nationally or even internationally accepted needs assessment that is the same done by someone who's like an occupational therapist or a psychologist or whoever is qualified in whatever the needs assessment is for, if you know what I mean. I feel like that would make a massive difference to so many people I've met. And also just the idea, going back to the video, of being able to choose between a presentation or a essay, or even what you were saying about a podcast. I never even would have thought that was an idea thing that you could do. But that idea that everyone's they're displaying the same skill or the same knowledge, they're just displaying it through a different format. It's as if you're commuting to work, except some people might walk, some people might cycle, some might take the bus, or some might some might take the car. Everyone does it a different way, but it's still getting to work.
I love that. Yeah. That's such a beautiful... I love that. Ebere, what would you like to magically make different?
I would definitely follow on from David. I definitely think empathy training is just so important, because even some of the stories I've heard from people, from fellow students, just about how teachers, lecturers treat them, it shouldn't be acceptable. It shouldn't be acceptable at all. And I think even in the video, some of them noted that their most positive experiences is when maybe lecturers or educators were compassionate enough to extend extensions and stuff like that. And I think because again, life happens, and I know we're there to learn. I know these institutions provide learning and everything, but again, life happens. We can't really predict situations. So I think when people and educators and lecturers are really compassionate and understanding, I think that's really massive, especially just empathy training. I know we're there to learn, and we're there to learn, but also treat me, you know, like you will treat a human being, be nice to me, be kind to me. Like, I know it's bare minimum, but you'll be surprised.
It means everything.
Yeah, it means everything. So yeah, definitely empathy training, compulsory, mandatory empathy training.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that if you're in college, you're not just learning the nuts and bolts of your course, you're learning about life.
Exactly.
And that might sound very grandiose, but most of us, when you go to the university for the first time, or any kind of tertiary education, you're in your early, young adulthood, and everything is weird and strange and scary, as well as wonderful.
Yeah.
And yeah, that has to be taken into account. Okay, thank you for listening. This has been really amazing. And thank you to my panelists for all of your contributions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.